So this is Matthew Wetherbee, and I'm going to review the movie Rocky 2. Rocky 2 starts off showing kind of the end of Rocky. They're showing kind of like the brutal fight between Rocky and Apollo Creed, and then it shows the ambulance driving them both off to the hospital. And that was pretty cool. Like, they really messed each other up. They were so badly hurt, both of them. And I liked it. I thought that the first half of Rocky 2 was actually a really good, realistic movie. But then, of course, it changes. But yeah, they focus on how beat up they are after the fight, and then they focus on Stallone afterwards. Like, now he did really, really good in the fight. People know who he is, but you go against the world champion and have your head pounded and like that, it's a wake-up call that maybe that's something you don't want to do for a living. So he's struggling in this really bad economy in these tough times to make a living. He's gotten more serious with Adrian, and I think he ends up proposing to her, or maybe they just move in together. I'm sorry, I think after the ridiculous number of times that I've watched these movies that I would like know that for certain. I think he proposed to her, but they definitely are moving in together. And he's trying to be the provider, take care of his woman, and he is not having much luck. The economy's horrible, and there's no jobs. And finally, he gets a job in the meat plant, and they show how disheartening and bad that is. It's just like all of these mundane tasks, dirty, nasty, heavy, hard work. And I've had some jobs like that. I didn't like them, but that's so real. That's reality right there. And it's like cold and dirty and stinky, and he's just working hard because he's got a job. He's just thankful that he has money. He can do things, but then they got to make cuts, and he's like one of the latest people that's been hired, so he's one of the first to go. And he was working good, he was working hard, but that's just the way it goes. So it's just showing how tough life is at the bottom and how tough the real world is, especially in a cold, hard city like Philly during the 70s. So I really, really like that. Now, if you saw Rocky, you saw how insane that fight was between Creed and Rocky. Rocky, like I mentioned in my Rocky review, had been practicing on those cattle carcasses, so he delivered some wicked, wicked blows to Creed's body. And so the fight wasn't a convincing win. It would be typical, like normally if you're the champ, it's got to be a convincing win to lose your title, and the way they fought, I would see it more as a draw, so I would have given it to the champ. But people were saying that he was a paper champion and that Rocky should have won the fight and stuff, and it was making Creed mad. And the thing that made the suspension of disbelief more feasible in Rocky was that Creed was really, really slacking off. He was all business. He was promoting, he was trying to get money. He wasn't really training at all. He was just slacking because this was some nobody, and he was so good that even the number one like the best contenders in the world, were like ducking him. They didn't want to fight him. And so he thought he had this in the bag. This is just some little local nobody from Philly. He's on the fighting register, but it's not like he was anything special. Whereas Rocky was like training like a madman and super determined the whole time. And that's why the suspension of disbelief didn't work for me in this film, because this time Creed, he goes and goes and goes for a rematch, and once he finally gets Rocky talked into it, Creed is on point. He is like so determined, so focused, and he's a world-class fighter. He's like the best in the world. He's the world champion, and he knows what he's doing, and he is doing it. He is just focused. And you're like, dude, he's gonna kill Rocky. And what's Rocky doing? He's moping around the whole movie. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, oh, it was really irritating. Like, I don't know what got into him, but he was just like really, really down. I think Adrian didn't want him to fight again, and he had to keep trying to talk her into letting him be a man and do what he does and whatnot, and she kept not wanting him to do it. Finally, she got behind him after like half the time period that Creed's just been training like a madman, and then he finally starts training. When he trains good, and it's got cool montages and whatnot, but there's no way he would have had a chance. Like, Creed would have destroyed him. It's just reality, like, based off the fictional characters in the story. Like, so I love the Rocky movies. I've watched them a million times. Obviously, I get over that when I watch it and enjoy it anyway, but realistically speaking, as a fighter, as a person that has been training forever to fight, and as a person who's trained a lot of people under me how to fight, it irritates me to see something that unrealistically portrayed as if we're supposed to buy it. But the first half is really good. If you took like Rocky and the first half of Rocky 2, that's basically a really cool realistic story, except for on Rocky you end on a high note with inspiration, which is why Rocky's such a good movie, whereas the first half of Rocky 2 is realistic and you get to go with the character, but it's really, really depressing and down, but it's on point with how reality is in some people's lives. So I liked it because of the realism is all, but it definitely wasn't inspiring and didn't have you ready to take on the world like you would be if you just ended at the end of Rocky. But anyway, this is how Rocky becomes the champ, and that's what they had to do. I didn't like how it came about, but when you've been a little kid growing up on these characters, it's still fun to watch. So I still enjoy them. Just saying it's not realistic.